It has a mistake in it. Those were the words spoken on the floor of the House of Representatives today at 11:10 a.m. that shocked every Republican member of the House of Representatives. They all know that the real leading expert on House rules is Democrat Jim McGovern, the Democratic leader of the House Rules Committee. They know that the Republican chair of the House Rules Committee, Virginia Foxx, is completely and permanently incompetent, always has been, always will be, as is her staff. And so the way in over his head, Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, learned from Democrat Jim McGovern on the floor today at 11:10 a.m. that what Speaker Johnson brought to the floor of the House to vote on had a mistake in it. Unlike the Senate, the House of Representatives they have a vote that creates a rule for each piece of legislation that passes through the House of Representatives, and it's a different rule for each one. They all have very similar elements. In the Senate, there are the standing rules of the Senate. They're written down, and they don't change. But the House Rules Committee, controlled by the party in power, literally writes a rule that is the guideline for how that particular bill will be handled on the floor of the House of Representatives. And that rule always says, for example, that there will be no amendments allowed on the House floor. That's why you only see amendments on the Senate floor, never on the House floor. But the incompetent Republicans did such a bad job of writing that very simple one-paragraph rule that Jim McGovern stopped everything in the House of Representatives today by announcing to the House it has a mistake in it. We've never seen anything like that in the House of Representatives, nothing that stupid in the House of Representatives. And for the next 11 hours, the Republican House of Representatives was paralyzed by that Republican mistake. Usually in the House of Representatives, no one in the Republican Party ever listens to anything anyone in the Democratic Party says on the House floor. But this time, the whole House heard what Congressman Jim McGovern said when he started a drama like we have never seen before in the House of Representatives with these words.
I want to alert all members to something about this rule. It has a mistake in it. Republicans have rushed this process from the very beginning to meet Trump's artificial July 4th deadline, and this rule is no exception. We found an error in the rule at 2 a.m. this morning after the Rules Committee reported the rule.
By reported the rule, Jim McGovern means after the Republicans on the Rules Committee voted for the rule and sent the rule to the floor of the House for a vote by the House. And here is the mistake.
This is going to sound a little in the weeds, but they forgot to do something called considering the previous question as ordered on their big ugly bill. Now, let me put that in English. What that means is they won't have an escape hatch once they start debate on this bill. So if they started and they realize they don't have the votes, they still have to take the embarrassing vote.
And that was shocking news to the dazed and confused Speaker Mike Johnson, who will never know half as much as Jim McGovern knows about how the House of Representatives actually works. And when Jim McGovern said that, we now know the Republicans did not have the votes. Mike Johnson didn't have the votes to pass his rule or his bill. Donald Trump didn't have the votes in the House of Representatives to pass his bill. And so there was panic in the Republican House and in the Trump White House.
Now, I expect they'll try to fix this with an amendment, but I have a question for members. If this Republican leadership cannot get a one-paragraph rule right, can we really trust them to get a 870-page bill right? Not only are we going to find things that were snuck into this bill, we're going to find massive mistakes that have unintended consequences for people and industries across this country. This whole process has been lousy, and this rule is no exception.
And then, using the opening that Jim McGovern identified for the House one by one, the Democrats used their right to go to the microphone and ask for an amendment to protect Medicaid and the Nutrition Assistance Program. And the Republicans blocked every single attempt on the House floor today to save Medicaid and save the nutrition assistance program that feeds poor children and poor families everywhere in this country, in every one of those House members' districts. And then Jim McGovern said this.
Mr. Speaker, over 100 Democratic members just asked to allow an amendment to protect Medicaid and SNAP, just to give us a vote. That's all we ask. And I will say we are here standing up for the American people no matter where they live. And this is what it looks like to fight for the American people, to make sure that this administration and this Republican Congress doesn't rip away their health care and their food benefits. That is disgusting. In the gentlewoman from North Carolina's district alone, 142,000 of her constituents would lose some or all of their SNAP benefits. And 5 rural hospitals are at risk of closure. We're here to help people, not to screw them over.
New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said this.
President Trump had issued some statements throughout this process saying and urging, insisting that this bill does not cut Medicaid. He's also said some things, he says he doesn't think I'm too much of a smart person. And I'll tell you one thing. It doesn't take a smart person to know if you're being lied to. All right. President Trump, you're either being lied to or you are lying to the American people. Because this bill represents, in the text of this bill, the largest and greatest loss of health care in American history. 17 million Americans will lose their health care on this bill, not undocumented people, not quote unquote the disgusting term illegal, but 17 million Americans will have their health care cut from this bill. On this point of tax on tips, as one of the only people in this body who has lived off of tips, I want to tell you a little bit about the scam of that text, a little bit of the fine print there. The cap on that is $25,000. While you're jacking up taxes on people who make less than $50,000 across the United States, while taking away their SNAP, while taking away their Medicaid, while kicking them off of the ACA and their health care extensions. So if you're at home and you're living off tips, you do the math. Is that worth it to you? Losing all your health care, not able to feed your babies, not being able to put a diaper on their bottom in exchange for what?
Congressman Jamie Raskin, who will join us later in this hour, came up with a new frame on the Republican bill.
I found the preamble to this big, ugly bill. We, the billionaires, and our king, in order to deform and sicken our union, establish injustice, ensure domestic servility, weaken our people's defenses, undermine the general welfare, and reserve to ourselves and our posterity staggering debt servitude for eternity, do hereby instruct the Republicans in Congress to strip 17 million people of their health care, increase co-pays, deductibles, and premiums for everyone else, cut 42 million people off of nutritional assistance, increase the national debt by $4 trillion, trash renewable energy systems, increase our electric bills for the carbon kings, all to weaken and destroy the Constitution of the people of these United States of America. Please include this preamble in the legislative record.
Donald Trump met with 13 individual members of the House of Representatives today who were seen entering the White House. The New York Times describes the scene this way. A conga line of angsty Republican lawmakers filed through the West Wing on Wednesday, hemming and hawing about the big domestic policy bill that President Trump wants them to pass by Friday. They walked out with signed merchandise, photos in the Oval Office, and by some accounts, a newfound appreciation for the bill. Targets all of a blunt force charm offensive waged with precision by the president. Mr. Trump knows how to make lowly lawmakers feel special. He sends them handwritten attaboys. He takes their phone calls at all hours of the day, even interrupting high-level West Wing meetings so as not to miss them. He brings them to Ultimate Fighting Championship fights and sits them ringside with his entourage. He invites them into the social whirl at Mar-a-Lago, all of which can feel incredibly heady for small-time members of Congress. I think the times might mean small-minded members of Congress. One of the Republicans who has been objecting to the Medicaid cuts from the start insisted today, after completely giving up all of his objections to the bill, quote, "We're not a bunch of little bitches." Okay,